Hey guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with a video that I did a couple months ago. I'll link that one down below. It is recommending books based on your favorite tropes. So I asked on Instagram what kind of tropes you were looking for and wanted recommendations for romance books. On Instagram, I don't know if I already said that, but if you're not following me on Instagram, it's always linked down below. I do ask questions on there for my channel and what you guys want, so if you want more say in what I do, go ahead and follow me there. But before I get started, I want to show you my new sweatshirt. It says Angsty Readers Club, and it is from Hello Lovely. I'm obsessed with this blue color. It's so pretty. You can use my code PEACE15 to save 15% on anything in their shop. I literally live in their sweatshirts. Chris from Books and Chris was like, another sweatshirt, and I'm just like, yes, because I always need more. I live in Hello Lovely. I'm wearing my Hello Lovely sweatpants as well because they're so comfy. I wear their stuff all the time and I genuinely love it. I'm just gonna move through these kind of quickly because I don't want this video to be a million years long, and I'm not gonna say too much about the plot, and because it is my week-long romance extravaganza leading up to Valentine's Day, I do talk about some of the same books. I only read so many books I love, so of course I'm gonna keep on recommending them, and this one is just a mashup of everything. So some of the books I've already talked about in other videos are in this video, so sorry if you feel like I'm being redundant, but for those of you who are not watching every single video and only clicking on the ones you like, this kind of has an overall encompassing of lots of different genres, and so I'm gonna go ahead and get to it. The first one is Older Woman, Younger Man. I really need to read more of this kind of trope because I absolutely love it. There's a couple I have on my TBR that I just haven't gotten to yet, but for this I'm recommending The Forbidden Man by Karina Halley. She is a personal trainer, well, like a sports trainer, and for soccer. She was married to the coach of her team, and then he cheated on her. It was a very messy divorce, so she goes to a new team, and this really young, I think he's like 25, soccer player really likes her, and it's The Forbidden Man because it's against the rules for any staff and player to date, but he is really into her and I love it so much. Really love Karina Halley's writing, and I really love this because it takes place in Spain because he plays for Madrid, and it's just great. If you like a romance that takes place in another country than the United States, I would recommend this as well. Then we have Fake Dating, which I feel like is going to be like the trope for 2021. So many books I talked about in my 2021 anticipated releases video were fake dating, but for this one I'm going to recommend Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur, and I only wrote the titles down on here, so I hope I get these authors correctly. I think that was what her last name was, but this is a sapphic romance. I think we are starting to get a lot more traditionally published sapphic romances, which is very exciting. This one's Darcy and Elle, and it is a kind of retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and they are set up by Darcy's brother and really don't hit it off, and they actually like really hate each other, but Darcy doesn't want her brother to keep on setting her up, so she lies and says that it went super well, and so then they start fake dating for the holidays, and it's really adorable. Darcy's very the stoic, harsh one, like grumpy, and then Elle's the sunshine. She's really into astrology. She's really built a career around that. It was a really fun romance, so if you like fake dating, recommend this one. A Recluse Hero, I'm going to recommend A Gentleman Never Keeps Score by Kat Sebastian. This one I know I've talked about in a recent video because I just filmed that yesterday. But this one, he is a recluse hero. Hartley, I think was his name, because he was in a relationship with someone, a man. It is a historical romance, so that wasn't allowed, and he is a recluse now because that man ends up passing away, and everybody knows that he's gay and thinks he was a part of a huge scandal, and so he doesn't want society to see him anymore. He barely even interacts with his family. Sam owns a bar, and his friend needs to find a nude painting of her and get it back, which is at the place that Hartley now lives, and so Sam agrees to take it back, and he runs into Hartley and they start a romance, and it is absolutely adorable. Hartley is going through a lot. He does not like people to touch him because of what he went through, and he feels really guilty over what he went through, like he was at fault for what happened, and he doesn't want society to see him anymore, so he does a lot of growth throughout this, a lot because of Sam, and it was adorable. And if you like a recluse hero, I think that's more so in historical romances with recluse heroes, but it was really good. For something that involves travel, I'm going to do A Kingdom of Dreams by Judith McNaught. This one is historical, and it involves travel because our hero kidnaps our heroine and her sister and tries to take them. And I believe, if I remember correctly, he's English and she's Scottish. The heroine is seen as like the not so pretty sister, and she's just like kind of blah, but she's already a spinster, and I remember she's like 18 and they're like, she's a spinster already. She's living in a convent with her gorgeous sister, and they end up being kidnapped because of a feud with their father, and they end up like traveling places, and on the way through there she tries to escape a ton of times, she tries to kill him a ton of times, and it's just great. It's like really hate to love, but they're on a journey back, I think, to his kingdom, like where he lives, and it was a lot of fun. Marriage in Trouble, I really need to read more of these. There's a new release by Chloe Leese that I really need to get to that she just released a couple weeks ago. That is Marriage in Trouble. For this one, I'm just gonna go with the classic romance book club. If you haven't read this yet, it is such a good marriage in trouble romance. Our hero Gavin, he is a baseball player, he has a stutter, and he isn't aware that his wife has been faking it during intimacy, and he is just in shock, and he's like, what? And she's been lying to him, and they go through a lot together, and they have to come to terms with things that both of them were not really happy with in their marriage, specifically her more so. It could have been avoided if they just had talked to each other, but then they really do learn to communicate again, and they have twin daughters, I think, and it was just really great. I really love this first book. Second book I wasn't a fan of, and I have to read the third book in the series, but for a Marriage in Trouble romance, I really enjoyed this one. For a second chance romance, I'm gonna go with Queen Move by Kennedy Ryan, because this one is like actual second chance where their first chance was just ripped away from them, and I don't know if I've really read a lot where it was out of their control for why they couldn't be together in the first place. So Kimba and the hero, I'm blanking on his name, they were really close growing up. I believe they were born on the same day, and their moms were really close, and they finally decided they want to be together in middle school. It was like a really cute scene. I think they went to a dance together and they had their first kiss, and then something terrible happens with their families, and one of them moves, and they never see each other again until they're adults at a funeral for someone. They are really successful in their own respective lives, and they kind of realize that they've missed each other, and they want to see what could happen, and I think they're both in their 30s now, so it's been a long time, and they've had lives. Kimba works for politics, like campaigns, because she's the best friend of the girl from the Kingmaker series. It's just great because they really wanted to be together. They're like soulmates in the beginning. They were born on the same day, they just grew up being best friends, and then they were like finally being something more, and it was just ripped away from them because of family drama. So it was great though. Really love this one. This one I got the most messages for, and I feel like I don't fully understand this. I was talking to Desiree from Genki Reader, and I was like, I don't know what to do for this one. So it is I Hate Everyone But You, and I don't know how to define this. Like, is it that they just hated them to begin with and then they like them? Is it just they're grumpy and we like a good grumpy hero? I don't know. So for this one, I have one, I guess I'll go with, and Desiree gave me a whole list that she had actually found, and I hadn't read any on that list, but this one's Praying for Rain by B.B. Easton. I haven't talked about this in a while. It is a like during the apocalypse book, so everyone's having dreams that the apocalypse is going to happen on a certain date, and so leading up to that it's like mass chaos, and our heroine Rain meets, I think his name's Wes, and they end up trying to survive together, and Wes is just this very stoic man who doesn't really get along with a lot of people. He's definitely a loner, but then he has a really soft spot for Rain once they start spending time together. It's a trilogy actually, so you have to read all three, and they're really good. I really, really love this series. I haven't talked about it in a while because I read it. I finished the first two, I think, in 2019, and then the last one came out in 2020, so it's been a while since I've read them, but that's definitely the trope for this book. If you have any other books that you think define this trope, let me know. Then someone asked for Wallflower and Bad Boy, and I had to go with the classic Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. I am late to the game and just read this, and she is a Wallflower. It's the Wallflower series. He is definitely the bad boy because he tried kidnapping her best friend in the previous book and forcing her into marriage with him. So our heroine needs to get married, and he needs money, so she goes to him even though he kidnapped her best friend, and she's like, everyone's gonna think I'm crazy, and offers marriage, and he's like, okay. So they go to Scotland to get married because, you know, you go to Scotland to get married because it's the only legal way to do it if you don't want permission from people or to wait, and they get married, and then they have a romance from there, and she like bets him that he can't be celibate because he's like a rake and a playboy, and it's a lot of fun. I really liked it. Definite Wallflower bad boy trope. For the suspense and murder one, I'm going with contemporary and another Kennedy Ryan. I'm gonna do the Kingmaker series by Kennedy Ryan. This one is not really a suspense in the beginning. It kind of is. So it spans a lot of time in the series. They meet when they're younger at a protest because she's half Native American, protesting the pipeline. His dad is putting the pipeline in, so he's there and he doesn't agree with what his dad does, and they meet to get arrested together. She's too young though, and he's in his young 20s, but she is in her teens, and then they don't meet again until, I think she's in college, they meet, and then they don't meet again until later. And there's a lot of suspense in here. So at one point he's in Antarctica and things are touch and go for a while, and which led me to wanting to read more like snowy mountain kind of stories, like Antarctica stories, because I'm fascinated by that. And then at the end of book 1, something happens with her that you're like, what the heck is gonna happen? So it ends on a huge cliffhanger with the suspense, and then we get started in the next book, and then something happens to someone else and some people die, and it's like crazy. I just thinking about it, I'm like, how did all that happen in just 2 books? It's a lot, lots of suspense, keeps you on your toes, and then an amazing romance as well. You can't go wrong with Kennedy Ryan. Someone asked for hero being nursed by heroine and brother's best friend in a historical romance. So I'm gonna go with The Sum of All Kisses by Julia Quinn. This is the first book in the Smythe Smiths Quartet series. I've been talking about the series a lot. I loved the first 3 books. I haven't gotten to the 4th one. I haven't heard the best about it. But in this one actually has the quote, "I burn for you," which they stole for Bridgerton. It's still Julia Quinn's writing, so they didn't really steal it, but they took it from that book and put it in Bridgerton, the series show. But in this one, she has like followed around her brother, and Marcus doesn't really have a good family, and so he was always with his best friend's family, Daniel, because Daniel gets book 2. But then Daniel ends up being part of a duel, and he is kind of made to leave. The person's father who was in the duel with him, the father said he's gonna kill him if he ever comes back to England, so he leaves and tells his best friend, like, look out for her. And then he ends up getting injured and it gets infected and he gets really sick, and so our heroine looks after him, but she grew up with him, he's her brother's best friend, and then they start to fall for each other, and then she's like, wait, but do you like me just because my brother told you to, like, look out for me? And then she, like, starts doubting things. But it's a really cute romance. I really enjoyed this. Book 2 is really good too, and book 3 is my favorite. So if you do like that nursing back to health though, that's a lot in here, so read this one. This one I actually have in my video coming out tomorrow, and it is Men Completely in Love and Don't Deny It, and I'm gonna do Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. This one, Galen is just like head over heels for Hester and isn't afraid to tell her, and this also is the hero being nursed by the heroine because they both work for the Underground Railroad. Galen gets really beat up because he is a notorious man working for the Underground Railroad, and like the whites hate him, and so he is found, and someone had leaked where he was, and so he was found and beat up, and then they help save him, and then Hester has to nurse him back to health. And I could just read the first 100 pages like over and over again. I could read a whole book of the first 100 pages is when he was being nursed back to health and falling for each other, and then Galen does not shy away from like saying that he loves Hester for the rest of the book, and it's really sweet and adorable, and I really loved it. So if you want that kind of hero, read Indigo. Marriage of Convenience, I'm going to go with This Earl of Mine by Kate Bateman. I was just watching Rachel Reads and Sings. It's something with singing and her name's Rachel, so I'm gonna link her down below. She was doing a video where it was her underrated historical romance recommendations, so I'll link that down below. And she said Kate Bateman is really underrated, and I agree because I don't see a lot of people reading Kate Bateman, and I loved This Earl of Mine by her, and it is a marriage of convenience, and I heard it's the same premise as Shanna by Kathleen Woodiwiss, but she is in an arranged marriage and she doesn't want to get married. I think she's in an arranged marriage. She wants to be a widow, so she decides to marry someone on death row in jail, and so that she can be a widow because they're gonna die anyways. And she ends up finding someone, but then he can't get married to her, so she takes the next volunteer, and he's actually a spy and not even in jail. And so then he gets released, and she's like, I just married an earl. I thought I was marrying someone who's gonna die so that I don't have to have some gross guy marry me and I can just be free. And it was a lot of fun. I have to read the next 2 books in the series. I haven't yet. Rachel did talk about the 3rd book, so that makes me really excited for the 3rd book. The premise, she said, is like Anastasia, so I'm very excited for that, to read that one. But I really enjoyed the 1st book, which is Marriage of Convenience. Okay, so this one's a little lengthy. So this says, hero wants to marry someone else because she's a lady and like wealthy, but falls in love with her heroine, and mistaken identity. So this one is If the Duke Demands by Anna Harrington. So the hero is a duke, and he feels like he can't be a playboy anymore because when he was like being all rakish, his dad died and he wasn't there for on his deathbed, and he just feels like, oh my gosh, now I have to be like straight and narrow, be the duke, and do everything that I'm supposed to. So he's supposed to marry someone wealthy, and then a girl who grew up next door, so she is like not poor, but she's not high class. She grew up like on the farm next door and her parents worked for them. She grew up with them, and she's in love with his brother. And she is like, I'm gonna finally seduce him. So she asks like a footman, she's like, which room is so-and-so's? And he's like, oh, him? It's like, it's this room. So she goes there, and there was a masquerade. She pointed to the wrong brother, and they look alike with masks on, and so she's in the wrong brother's room trying to seduce him, and they kiss, and then it's like, wait a second, you're not who I thought you were. And he's like, wait a second, it's Miranda. I think her name was Miranda. And he's like, what are you doing here? She's like, oh, but I love your brother. And so then he's like, fine, I'll help you get my brother if you help me find a wife. And so he is determined to marry this one lady who who is the perfect to be a duchess. She's like been groomed to be a duchess her whole life. And he promises her that he'll get his brother and her to try to be together. And they work together to try to get each other with someone else. And there's a little mistaken identity in the beginning, so that's why they like are kind of interested in each other now, because they're like, oh, there was some heat there. And it's so good. One of my new favorite historical romances of all time. I did a video of those, and this one's in there, so I would definitely recommend this. Then I have romances with spies, and for this one I have Private Eye by Katrina Jackson. This one has a spy falling for a cam girl. He's been watching her ever since she moved in with one of their employees, so he like did a background check on her, and then they figure out that there are arms dealers like in the chat, like doing meetups in her chat room, and so they end up asking her to help them, and so he has to pose as her boyfriend, and it's great. I loved this one. And then we also have The Reinvention of the Rose, which is an ex-spy. So if you want an ex-spy trying to like reintegrate into society, this was a fun one. She falls for a tattoo artist, and I liked it. I did want more of her spy background, but that wasn't the point of the book, so that was just like a me thing, but these both were a lot of fun. Then we have a bodyguard romance, and for this one I have Let Me Please You. This one's a bodyguard romance. She is the sister of a couple of famous people. I've only read one of the books in the series other than this one. This is 3.5. I read the first one, and he is a famous rapper. I do believe one of them is an athlete too, and so they have bodyguards around all the time. She babysits for one of their kids all the time, and the bodyguard and her fall in love, and then he's like, but I can't betray them. They give me a really good job. I've been working them for a while, and so then he tries to like not work for her anymore and like have someone else, and then she gets mad, and it's really fun. It's a really quick audio. It's a novella. I listened to the audiobook, but I really like this bodyguard romance. Then we have a Character on the Spectrum, and I have two for this because one of them is not out yet, but I already read it. So the first one is Always Only You by Chloe Leese. Our heroines on the spectrum. This is one of my new favorite romances of all time. She works for a hockey team, and she has arthritis, and she's in her mid to late 20s. I think she's like 26, 27. So she walks with a cane, and she doesn't really get like those social cues. She is on the autism spectrum, and our hero has loved her for a while, and he is just a cinnamon roll. I have this in my cinnamon roll heroes video, and he starts getting closer with her, and he does take care of her at one point when she's sick, and it's adorable. And my lighting's being weird, sorry about that. The sun's doing weird things out in the window, but this one's adorable. I absolutely loved it. If you want a hockey player romance as well, check this one out. But then I also read Act Your Age, Eve Brown, and Jacob's on the spectrum, and he is amazing. Eve is kicked out by her parents basically and cut off, and they say she needs to find a job for a year before they let her have her like inheritance back, her trust fund. And so she goes for a drive, stumbles upon a wanted ad for a chef at a B&B, and that's the one Jacob owns, and he doesn't want to hire her. Then he decides he should because his like cousin I think tells him he should, and so then he chases after her. She runs him over, and then it goes from there, and it's so stinking cute. I have my vlog of reading this book that I put up on Tuesday, so check that out. But both of these are great for characters on the spectrum. Next we have an amnesia romance, and for this one I'm actually currently reading one by Mary Jo Putney, and I'm enjoying it, but I haven't finished it yet, so I can't recommend it. But I have Someone to Watch Over Me by Lisa Kleypas. Our heroine is found in the Thames, and our hero is a Bow Street runner, so he's kind of like a cop, and that was like, I think before like police were a thing, it was the Bow Street runners who help people like uncover things, and it's actually real. I thought it was made up, but I've like read the Bow Street runners in other books, and then I looked it up, and it was a real thing. And so he ends up finding her, and he knows who she is. She's a lady of the night, and she's not comfortable with that. She's like, I don't think I would do that, because a lot of amnesia romances I've read, they have like these like instincts about who they are, and she has an instinct like, I don't know if I would have done that. But then he kind of lies about their relationship, which isn't the greatest, but he ends up taking care of her and trying to figure out who tried to kill her, and it was great. I really enjoyed this one. Obviously, they fall in love. For post-apocalyptic romance, I'm gonna go with Fire in His Blood by Ruby Dixon. This one has dragon shifters, and it is post-apocalyptic. So like our heroine tries to like find different things in like trash yards and stuff, and then she's arrested for doing that because sometimes it's illegal, and thrown in jail, and then she's put up as sacrifice to try to lure in the dragon because they're trying to kill them. But then the dragon ends up liking her and takes her, and then they fall in love because he's a dragon shifter. So it's great. Can't go wrong with Ruby Dixon. Enemies to Lovers, I have The Culmination of Everything. This one, our heroine loses her fiance in a mass shooting, which is very, very traumatizing beginning of this book, so be aware of that going in. So she decides to climb this mountain because that was the last thing he texted her, and she ends up falling, and the hero is like one of the like people who works in the mountain. I forget what they're called. Rangers? I don't remember, and he's really angry at her. He's like, of course you like are unprepared and fall, like I hate people like you. And then they have intense chemistry though and fall in love, and it's great. So they really hate each other in the beginning, really hate each other, and then she takes some like survival class from him, and it's funny because another guy kind of shows interest in her, and then he gets jealous even though he hates her. It's really great. Then we have historical romance with a mystery, and I'm going to recommend All Scott and Bothered by Kerrigan Byrne. In this one, our heroine, she inherits a business from someone, and I don't remember, like, people think it's a brothel, but it's not, but it kind of is, but she inherits it, and the hero is trying to take it down because he thinks that's the reason why all these little girls are going missing. And there's the whole mystery of like what actually happening to these girls, and it's not the business she's running, but then she kind of like puts on a disguise every time he comes around the business, and he also sees her though in normal society and is kind of falling for her, but doesn't know that she's the one who actually owns this business as well. And so it's good. I really enjoy this one. She's a plus size heroine as well. She has a really bad past. There's a really bad prologue that happens in every one of Kerrigan Byrne's books. Really sad, and then someone comes and saves her, so just keep that in mind. The next one is Realizing Love After Breaking Up or Distancing. For this one, I'm going to do the What He Doesn't Know duet by Candy Steiner. This is between a woman and her husband and a person that she didn't really get to actually experience a relationship with but wanted to. So you don't know who she ends up with, but the distance applies for both because she's like kind of distancing herself from her husband, and they're reevaluating their relationship. And it's been years since she's seen this guy. I think he was her brother's friend, and he's ready to make a try out of it. He's like, I love you, we can do this. And so she has to choose between this guy that she's wanted and who now wants her, or her husband, who they are going through a very rough time. So it is a very emotional series. It is a duet, and then the third book is about the guy she doesn't choose, and I honestly didn't know who I wanted her to choose because I liked both of them, but really angsty, really great. Perfect for this trope. Then we have whimsical heroine and also single parent. I'm gonna do Look the Part by Jewel E. Ann. This also is a character on the spectrum because his son has autism, and so this one, he is a lawyer, she is a music therapist, and he rents out one of the offices in his building to her and doesn't realize it's gonna be noisy because there's music, and she just is a really fun personality, and he's so serious. This is like the Grump Sunshine trope. He's a single parent, and he does feel guilty about something that happened because his wife is dead. He was there when she passed away, and so it has to deal with grief and alcoholism. They do talk about that as well, so keep that in mind going in here. But she slowly starts to break him down, and his son really loves her and is learning to play guitar with her, and it's great. She's very whimsical, and it really has the single parent trope, so I really enjoyed this one. For a non-rake trope for historical romance, I have The Duchess War by Courtney Milan. This one, he is a duke, and he actually talks with her near the end about him not being a rake, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll leave that for you guys to read, but he is not a rake, though he is a duke, and she is of not high standing, so they do end up falling for each other, and it's great, and you need to read it. And that's all I want to say about it, because it's best to not know too much going into this one. Next, I have a baking romance, so I'm recommending Wrapped by Rebecca Witherspoon. She is a baker, and she decides to join a dating app and sees a old colleague on there, and they end up deciding to meet on this dating app. It is a novella, it is a Christmas novella, but it's really fun, and they end up going on some dates together, and she has her bakery, and so like his best friend will stop by and he'll stop by, and it's a lot of fun, and I really liked the whole bakery aspect of this book. Then we have a medical hero or heroine in a historical, and I'm going to recommend Tempest. This one, she is a mail order bride, and he is a doctor, and when they meet, she actually ends up shooting him because she thinks that he's trying to rob them because they were just attacked, and then like new people come and she thinks it's them again, so she shoots at them. She ends up shooting him. He's a doctor, and he's like really well respected in the town, and she has to like get his permission to do things, and like so she's trying to buy things, so she has a lot of her own money, and they're like, does your husband know you're doing this? And she's like, excuse me. And so she's very much trying to break that stereotype of having to listen to her husband around town. People are shocked by her, but it's really great. I really enjoy Beverly Jenkins' historical romances. They are in America, and they are really different than a lot of other historical romances because it's typically not like the titled people, and we're in America, and so you're just like normal people in America trying to make a life. So he is a doctor, and she's a mail order bride, and it's really fun. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. This has already gone on way too long than I wanted it to, but those are some recommendations based on your favorite tropes that you asked for. I'll do this again. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your trope. I had a lot of people respond with tropes they wanted, so I just picked a bunch. I want to say I have like 30 recommendations here, so I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any recommendations based on these tropes. I'd love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.